I won't let my daughter stay in the same room as her boyfriend story. My husband, our 16-year-old son, and I are going next month to visit our daughter at her college, which is a few states away. She is a freshman and has been with her boyfriend Steve for 3 years. Steve is really a great kid, but since money is a bit tight in his family, he is doing 2 years at junior college while working to save up for the school my daughter attends. We have never taken him on a trip, but since he says money is right, we decided to bring him with us on our visit to see our daughter. He visited her once on his own back in the fall, but due to his finances, he wouldn't be able to afford another trip this school year. He was over the moon when we invited him. We don't want him to pay for a single thing. His flight, his hotel room, he will be sharing with our son. They get along really well, and his food and drink will all be paid for by us. And really, we are glad to do it. We've also never really had a disagreement with Steve until now. When speaking to my daughter about plans, the hotel came up. This is when I found out that my daughter's dorm roommate was out of town that weekend, and she plans to have Steve stay in her dorm with her while we visit. I told her absolutely not. I said what they do when we aren't there is their business, but since we are going to be there and funding this whole trip, he will be staying at the hotel. Call my husband and I old school or traditionalists, but we are Christians, and the idea of them staying together on our visit makes us uncomfortable. We think we are being rather generous to take him in the first place. The word got back to Steve, and he actually called me and asked why he couldn't stay with our daughter. I explained my reasons above, and he got irate. He tried to pull the adult card. I said, Steve, here is the deal. If you want to stay with her, that's fine. You will still be welcome to tag along with our family, but there will be separate checks on every meal, and he could figure out his own way there. He said, we know he can't afford that. And I said, all we ask is that you sleep at the hotel. He agreed, but now my daughter is saying we embarrassed him and he's thinking of not coming. Response 1. I think it's nice that you want to pay for the trip, but they are together, and this is an opportunity for them to be together privately. Obviously, they don't get to do this often, so why not just let them be? Your being Christians doesn't stop them from being who they are and doesn't give you the right to butt into their business. You may not agree with it, but they are adults. It's just too bad your generosity is conditional. You're the a-hole, reply 1. The Christian parents who are in denial about what their kids are up to are the ones who end up as young grandparents because their kids aren't going to buy condoms because the parents might find them. You're the a-hole, reply 2. Had this conversation with my aunt a year before her gorgeous quarterback son knocked up his girlfriend in high school. At the time, I was more concerned about HIV as we had no treatments for it then. She argued about how her beautiful children raised in the light of Jesus were not going to have premarital sex. I was old enough to remember when she and my uncle were dating. They were definitely hypocrites and told them they had forgotten the hormones of their teen years, and they were lying to themselves if they thought their objectively attractive teenagers were going to stay virgins until marriage. Reply 3. My very Christian parents went through my room at 16 and found a condom wrapper, kicked me out on the streets, and let me be homeless for 6 months. They only took me back because the police found me and forced them to. I was forced to be homeless as a teen to have safe sex. The danger they put me in was 100 times worse than the safe sex I was having with my long-term boyfriend. They are much better now and are very regretful of their actions before. But man, life was tough growing up with all that Christian love. Reply 4. My husband and I are both the products of teenage pregnancies, and when our daughters were dating and had serious boyfriends, we had the talk about the responsibilities that came with sexual activity, and that using birth control was one of their responsibilities. When the oldest was a freshman in college, she had some symptoms and decided she had a blood clot from her birth control. It was actually a pinched nerve in her neck. My husband was telling his dad about her calling an ambulance to get her down because she thought she had a blood clot from birth control pills. My father-in-law spluttered, "Birth control pills? Birth control pills? Why was she taking— Oh, I get it. She was taking birth control pills to regulate her cycle and make her periods more manageable." My husband looked at him and said, "No, Dad. She's taking birth control pills so she doesn't get pregnant when she has sex with her boyfriend." I thought the old man was going to blow a valve. He was spluttering and stammering so much. My husband shut him down by saying, "Before you get started, I was having sex when I was younger than she is now. And I know you were, because by the time you and Mom were her age, you already had me." It's better that she takes a pill every morning than to care for a baby every morning. Response 2. Call my husband and I old school or traditionalists, but we are Christians, and the idea of them staying together on our visit makes us uncomfortable. This is totally strange. So it's okay as long as you don't know about it? And what is the problem with Steve being at the dorm since you're staying at the hotel? I don't get it. This sounds totally controlling for absolutely no reason. If they're going to have sex, they will do so regardless of whether you force this or not. So it serves absolutely no purpose other than to control and alienate your daughter. You can of course call the shots because it's your money, but all your daughter will take away is when her parents are doing something nice. It comes with strings attached that are controlling her life. You're the a-hole. Reply 1. I think she is less likely to choose Christianity for her own life. When any faith is forced on someone, it isn't their faith. They never choose it for themselves. And when it feels too constricting, they toss it aside. The daughter's moral values are whatever they are, and no matter what the parents believe, the daughter has her own values. Reply 2. I believe OP's point is she didn't bring him along to allow that to happen. She didn't do this to allow them to have sex. It was a kind gesture to bring and foot the entire bill, to allow him time with her. Honestly, it's not even that big of a request in my opinion, but that's not the point. It seems that OP hangs up. Steve is considered part of the family group, but that also comes with respecting the request of those creating funding and allowing the event to even be done. I think that's her thing. Reply 3. Raised Roman Catholic here, and the poster sounds very similar to my mother. The result is, I'm not religious. I avoid taking help, especially financially, from my family, because there's always some sort of string attached, it feels, and there's a good amount of built-up resentment from my childhood/adolescence/young adulthood that I am trying to work through now. My parents are much better now, and not as controlling or pushy with religion, but the anxiety and impact of growing up that way still affects my relationship with them. Reply 4. I love all the insane assumptions people are reading into this that aren't remotely implied by the story. They pretty much say that they understand and accept that their daughter and Steve have sex. There's a difference between my daughter has sex with this guy and this guy is screwing my daughter in her room at this very moment. One's a little more awkward, and they'd rather not have to think about it. That's not the kind of spiritual abuse people are making it out to be. Not to mention, it's their money. This sub has, on multiple occasions this week, handed down a not the a-hole verdict on an OP deciding not to give anything to a sibling who was cut off from their inheritance for some kind of screwed up reason or another. There was usually implied to be some sort of abuse or character assassination involved, and the OP showed zero empathy for it, and everyone was like, whatever, your money is your money. But some teenagers have blue balls for a couple of days, and it's the religious crime of the century. Reply 5. The only thing said here is that he'd be staying over with her, but that doesn't mean sex is always involved. The biggest thing is that OP knows they are dating, that they do have sex, and that the two are together, etc. They claim their reasoning is because they're old school, which honestly is insane for 2 reasons. 1. They're adults. We're not talking teenagers, but full-grown adults, and OP, who is offering to take the boyfriend with them for their daughter's happiness, is adding a stipulation that 2 grown adults can't stay in the same room. 2. OP's comment on traditionalism isn't even about them possibly having sex on the same trip with the parents there. It's about the fact that they're not married. If the boyfriend and girlfriend were married, but just in different locations, finishing their goals, there absolutely would be no issue with him staying over, because business between a married couple belongs in their bedroom. OP is an a-hole because they claim they're doing this as a nice gesture to allow the girlfriend and boyfriend to spend some much-needed time together, but only with the rule that they can't stay in the same room together. This equally implies that they aren't going to permit any alone time between their adult daughter and her adult boyfriend, because honestly, they could have sex at any point in the day, so long as there is alone time. It wouldn't have to specifically be at night when he's staying over. It is their money, yes, but that doesn't make them any less of an a-hole for knowing that the boyfriend is financially struggling, has only done 1 trip to see the daughter, knows their daughter probably misses her boyfriend too, but they're only going to permit this kind gesture on the basis that these grown adults can't even be alone together. That's whack. Even normal Christians aren't like this at all. Response 3. You're the a-hole, I think. I get a weird controlling religious vibe from more of OP's comments. I don't think you should have offered to pay. I think the boyfriend assumed that your offer to pay also came with some amount of freedom. It seems as if you're offering to pay, but also want the boyfriend to have zero freedom of movement. If he wants to see your daughter and have alone time with her, he will do that. If you pay for his trip, you're basically giving him the green light to do that. I think that might have been where he was confused. In other words, I think it was a mistake to offer to pay. Reply 1. It wasn't a mistake. It was a cold, calculated manipulation by a couple of Puritan control freaks who also sound like they love to lord over their child's partner because they have more money than their parents. You're the a-hole. Just leave your kid and her boyfriend alone. You won't be seeing much of them once they are financially independent anyway. Reply 2. They also probably want to just spend time alone together. She might want to hang out on campus and introduce him to her friends. And yeah, maybe later they'll have sex, but they're adults who have been together for 3 years. That's 17% of her life. They obviously care deeply for each other. Reply 3. The trip is like a family trip, so my husband, son, and I can visit her at her school. We thought it would be nice to invite Steve so they could see each other. It's a trip for us to spend time with our daughter, and we included Steve. It's not a trip for Steve and our daughter to do whatever they want. Reply 4. You are looking at this the wrong way. If Steve only sees her with you, then he will take up more of your time with your daughter. If Steve is staying in her room, they can catch up in private at times when you are not around. This provides you more time together where she can pay attention to you. But that isn't why, really, you just don't want them shagging. You're the a-hole. You are treating them like children. They are not. Response 4. Do you want your daughter to marry Steve? They've been together for 3 years and most likely have had sex before. Okay, you don't want them to have sex on your dime. But what is the long-term plan? A long-distance relationship requires work to survive. It requires faithfulness and understanding and a lot of patience and resisting temptations. I assume you want your daughter to marry the guy she's been investing her affections in for the past 3 years, a good guy according to you. Couples need a cuddle and sometimes to cry together and reassure each other. Sure, you're paying and you have a right to express your preferences. But what is the bigger picture, OP? Do you want them to break up? Forgo some intimacy and alone time. Not everything is sex, Badao. Because you're uncomfortable, you're the a-hole because you sound uncaring about what is best for your own kid. Spending some time alone with her partner isn't a big ask. Suppose they want to just stare at each other to remind the other person of how they look, since it's been a while since they've seen each other in person. Not everything is about sex. Maybe your morals/beliefs should let your mind be open enough to think your daughter is more than just a sex-starved young woman. Reply 1. Imagine that OP's daughter will breaks up with Steve because of a long-distance relationship, is trying, and will get herself a local boyfriend, whom her parents cannot control, and who has their own dorm, or can stay at hers without their information. It's where they will regret their power play. Reply 2. This is 100% why I told my mom nothing about anyone while I was in college. She made it abundantly clear I'd be shamed for learning about my own body and who I'd want in a relationship. She apparently would have preferred it if I just married the first guy I wanted to have sex with and be miserable for the rest of my life like her. I'm also not a Christian anymore, if that says anything. Reply 3. I was raised in a fundy household. Everything was about protecting my virginity, or I would burn in hell and die. I'm 40 now, and I tell my mom nothing about anything. This is how OP will end up as well. Times have changed. Having the occasional penis in your vagina no longer brings shame like it's the Middle Ages. Time spent talking, cuddling, and yes, having sex is important for a relationship to survive. The parent comment here says it all. Reply 4. My dad is super fundy too. My mom, they've been divorced for a couple of decades, was not, and I lived with her, so most of my childhood was relatively normal when it came to sex ed and not being shamed for having hormones and stuff. But I do remember when my husband and I were dating, and my dad would make comments that were anti-sex, even though I was well into my 20s and not about to discuss my sex life with him. But as soon as we got married, it was like something weird flipped. Like, oh, now sex is great. And dad wanted to ask questions about my sex life like this is just normal conversation. Yeah, no, absolutely not. I went 27 years without ever being able to mention sex in front of you, and now you want to talk about how I need to please my husband, wink wink. Yeah, screw all that. Response 5. Soft, you're the a-hole. Although I understand it may be uncomfortable, your daughter is at college. She could have different guys or multiple different guys in her dorm if she so chooses. She's not. She wants her BF, who you like, to stay with her. You have the right to pull funding, but your daughter and Steve will have the right to hold it against you in the future. Also, Steve pulling the adult card should have been a legitimate thing because they are adults. Your right to control your children is now over. Reply 1. Couldn't agree more with the be thankful she's in a safe and monogamous relationship angle. She could be totally promiscuous at college instead, or have an OnlyFans page, or be experimenting with threesomes and orgies and who knows what else. OP, a hetero-monogamous long-distance relationship, is the definition of Christian at college nowadays, and you are looking a gift horse in the mouth. Also, you're giving them an excuse to run off on you while you're visiting to be alone, and for your daughter to build a wall between you. You're the a-hole. Reply 2. This is a really interesting take. I was thinking this whole time, my parents aren't religious, but there is no way my dad would have paid for my BF to come visit me and have sex. Like, his brain would not have computed any other formula than that his brain was paying for Steve to visit, and Steve and I were planning to hump at night instead of his sleep in the provided hotel. I know because he explained this was his opposition to me having a single dorm room and a car with a large back seat. But my mom had a much more relaxed approach when I came home from college for the summer, and she was the one who ran the house. Her point was, I have no idea what you are when you are at college. I have to trust that you make good decisions and make it home safe. So why am I on your ass when you come to visit for breaks? Your grandparents did that with curfews, and I hated that crap. Her rules were things like, tell me when you are coming home, or if you aren't coming home so I don't worry. Give me a plausible excuse. Don't mess up. Worked out well. And my dad didn't care, because he wasn't paying for crap, and I had a car with a small back seat, so I was boinking anyone in the car he paid for, his words. Or let another man drive it. That was another thing he cared about. ETA. I feel like I can't stress enough how much for my father it was the sheer gall of paying for a man to bang his daughter, or paying for another man at all. They couldn't drive my car. They couldn't boink in my car or dorm room, certainly not his house. He balked at helping me pay for to live with a platonic male friend as one of 4 roommates in college because he thought it might be trickery to fund a live-in. Oh, friend. He's never even offered to pay for a vacation for a partner. My husband shares my room because he's there. Damn, if I'm thinking about it, my husband gets a birthday text only, never a gift. Our joint Christmas check has only my name on it. He's probably secretly thrilled my sister and I kept our maiden names. He just can't live in a world in which he facilitates with his hard-earned cash a man's trip to have sex with another woman, much less his daughter. It's not religion, it's a principle. Reply 3. My dad was like this. He would chuck these little fits all the time. Once after we caught up, he offered me a lift home. I'd moved out by then and was living with my then boyfriend and another guy in a share house. And during the drive, he told me he felt like he was driving me to my pimp, or something implying that I was some kind of sugar baby or kept woman. Never mind that I was working and paying my own rent there. That man and I are married now, and I haven't talked to my dad in about 7 years. Sad, but that's life. Response 6. You're the a-hole. This isn't about religion, it's about control. You're okay with them being alone overnight as long as you don't foot the bill or know about it. You want to attach strings to limit a gift for 2 adults. Reply 1. Right, saying you're Christian like it makes you higher morally. Meanwhile, these are 2 loyal young adults. And Christianity, in my view, is about charity and love toward others, not moral codes. BO, I'm okay with someone being conservative, but this sounds controlling. Reply 2. My boyfriend's parents allowed us to stay in the same room on their vacations and even left us for a night. They had something to attend to back in our city. BF and I still talk about it to this day. We utilize that time to get to know each other, play question games, tell stories, express our hearts. I'm honestly thankful for that time we had because we now view it as really special. His parents probably don't realize, but it meant a lot to us. Reply 3. Agreed. I feel that OP is trying to set a precedent for the future family power dynamic. If they set it now, they can control the couple's marriage, kids, careers, where they live, etc. They are either consciously or subconsciously testing the waters to see if the future son-in-law will be the pushover they want him to be. And sadly, I don't think they realize that having a son-in-law they can control is only useful when they are alive. Once they pass, do they really think they can trust him to continue taking good care of their daughter? The same goes for sheltering children. It leaves children ill-prepared to handle the real world. It is actually more damaging to control every aspect of their lives than letting them test their own limits and set their own foundations through trial and error. If OP is concerned about pregnancy, the wiser choice would be to have an open discussion with her daughter about birth control and reproductive care, rather than burying her head in the sand. Stop creating codependency by denying them the tools they need in this life to succeed. Response 7. You're the a-hole. Why the hell are you taking him if you're not going to let him have any personal time with his girlfriend and are lording it over him by using the old "my money, my rules" trope? You're on the fast track to them going LC or NC once she finishes her studies, possibly sooner. Reply 1. Also, what type of precedent is this setting? OP, as a Christian, I imagine you say grace at mealtimes, right? If your daughter decides she doesn't want to practice saying grace anymore, will you accept that if she's paying for a meal and she asks you not to say heave, it's her money, her rules, right? Would you be respectful of that decision? If your daughter provides financial support at the end of your life, will she have a say in which doctors you can employ with that money? Which living facilities can you live in? I mean, golly, if she's paying for your funeral and decides she doesn't want the service in a church, will you be totally okay with her money, her rules? Reply 2. It's like she thinks of this couple as kindergarten BFGF. They're not really together. They're just cute little friends. What do you mean they want alone time? No, that's disgusting. Cue excuses about who's paying, religion, etc., but really they're just grossed out. This is the flip side of adults throwing a tantrum about any mention of their parents having sex. It's shockingly immature. OP is really telling on herself. No one mentioned sex but her. She's the one who brought it up, and she has the audacity to call them immature. Grow up, OP. Your kids are more adult than you are. You're the a-hole. Response 8. OP is basically saying, I'm not funding this trip for you to go bang my daughter. You can do that on your own dime. She feels that she would be facilitating this, and it makes her uncomfortable. Clearly, she's uncomfortable that her daughter is having sex, but realize there's nothing they can do about it, except this one time when they're funding the trip. Reply 1. Don't offer a gift if you want to control how someone uses it. It's a simple concept that somehow doesn't apply here for some reason. Reply 2. Because that's a dumb concept, my parents paid my college tuition. That was $250,000. The idea that they shouldn't have any say at all on where $250 goes is absolute nonsense. The issue with strings attached is often more so when the strings are shown rather than attaching strings themselves. I do have a problem with people who have hidden strings who get mad later on. However, at the same time, there are some reasonable strings we can assume are true. For example, if I give you a beautiful handwritten letter, an a-holy thing to do would be to rip it up and throw it away. If I give you a luxury purse and you cut it up, that's pretty rude, and I'm going to be mad even if it's a gift. These things often don't need to be stated. Based on the fact that the daughter knows OP and their religion, as well as their religious views on premarital sex, I would err on the side of no a-holes here. That was a pretty obvious string. Hell, my parents aren't religious, and I'm a full-grown adult, and they'd still be uncomfortable with me bringing a random back to the hotel while on vacation or while I'm visiting home. Reply 3. It just reminds me of my cousin complaining to me about our grandma trying to run his life, and how did I not have her doing that to me? The answer was simple. He was letting her help him financially, i.e. give him money, whereas I would rather be homeless than take money with that many strings attached to it. I told him, as long as he took her money, he was given the right to have every opinion she wanted about his life and to voice it. If he wanted it to stop, then to stop taking her money. That was 20 years ago, and he's still taking her money. There's no such thing as free money, or in this case, a free trip. Don't accept something you're not willing to make compromises on if you can't afford it. Not the a-hole. Reply 4. Yeah, I mean, I get it. The daughter is understandably upset that she can't spend the night with her long-distance BF. But I understand why religious parents don't want to pay for their daughter's sex weekend. I honestly think there are no a-holes here. I do think they messed up by not sitting Steve and the daughter down and talking this out. They should have come to him as an adult and asked him to respect their values on this trip by staying in the hotel at night instead of the dorm and maybe planning out some alone time for the kids during the visit. Instead, he finds this out secondhand, and they end up having a confrontation, which is obviously not ideal. Response 9. And she plans to have Steve stay in her dorm with her while we visit. I told her, absolutely not. I said what they do when we aren't there is their business, but since we are going to be there and funding this whole trip, he will be staying at the hotel. You're kidding, right? Why don't you want your daughter to have sex with her boyfriend? Your beliefs are yours, and you absolutely do not have to have sex outside of marriage. Imposing them on other people is just narrow-minded. Using money as a lever really makes you're the a-hole. Reply 1. Either the daughter has sex with her boyfriend because she doesn't share OP's religious views, or she shares OP's religious views and won't actually have sex, just cuddle or something. In the second scenario, OP has nothing to worry about and should let go. In the first scenario, OP has already lost the battle and should worry more about not alienating her daughter by imposing her own will, i.e., she should let go.